Very, very good. Okay. So I prepared already actually let's start with one story and then we'll leave the second story for exactly the chapter of this book that I want to cover today. We're actually going to start and do chapter 7. We can go back and do the rest of the chapters. But the reason I'm going to do chapter 7 is because it has to do with one of those stories that Lori's reminding me about. So I'll start with another story. A very funny story that was, hold on one second, guys. A very funny story that was shared by Rabbi Zachariah Wallerstein. And the story is like this. So there's a man, and I'll send you the link also to the story as well when I send the replay email. So this man gets a call from an acquaintance who wants to borrow $10,000. And he tells him, look, I just need it for a week. I'm about to close on a deal. So I really just need it temporarily. You're just going to get me by. As soon as the deal closes in a week, you'll have the money back. So he didn't really want to lend him the money. It's a lot of money. But whatever. The guy was like, okay, fine. So he lends him the money. And a week goes by and he doesn't see the money. And 2 weeks go by and nothing doing with the money. And a month and 2 months and 6 months. And he's asking him for the money and the guy's not paying back the money. A whole year goes by, nothing. At this point, he's, whatever. 2 years go by. And after he's been trying to get back his money, after 2 years, the guy gives him a call and says, look, I have $5,000 now. If you're here in 20 minutes, you can have $5,000. But if you don't come, you're getting nothing. So the guy who lent the money is thinking like, oh my gosh, like, you know what? I better rush there because at this point I have zero. At least now I have a chance I'm at a loss here, but I have a chance to get $5,000. So he gets in the park and he drives, I don't know if he's in Borough Park, and he drives all the way to Williamsburg or however, whatever it is. And he's speeding on the freeway in New York. And all of a sudden, because he knows like this guy's going to gamble the money away. He already realized what kind of character we're dealing with. And he's not going to see even a $5,000. All of a sudden, he's speeding in the freeway and wheel, the sirens. And he says, Hashem, seriously, Hashem, I lent the guy the money and I'm going to lose the money. I'm anyway losing the money. I did a mitzvah. Now I have to also pay a ticket. This is crazy, a speeding ticket. So the policeman, of course, comes and, license and registration. And he says, listen to me. I lent this guy $10,000 and it's been 2 years and he's not paying me back the money. And he says he has $5,000, but I have to be there within 20 minutes or he's not going to get a penny back. And the policeman says, I've heard many, many stories. Many, many stories. You could just take your story. This is a good one. It's a really good one. It tops them all, but come on. He says, no. It's the truth. In fact, come with me to the guy. And if it's not true, take me to jail. Come on. He says, really? Just come. If it's not true, you'll take me to jail. All good. So the highway patrol policeman, turns on the siren, and he like opens and escorts him, or they get all the way to wherever they're going. And they get to an apartment building and he goes up with the guard, and the guard is all dressed, those highway patrol guys, they have like the boots and the hat and it's very official, the thing. And they show up in the apartment building and knock on the door. And the guy that with the $5,000 opens the door and he sees him who lent him the money with this fancy dressed policeman. And he says, oh, no, it's okay. I have the $10,000. Here, take the $10,000. And what's the moral of this story? Evidently, we all know the moral of the story. But the idea is that so often in life, we think things are happening to us to hurt us or to cause us distress or pain, but really it's just Hashem helping us out, paving the way for something incredible. Where could you, how could you even, you weren't going to get a penny. You weren't going to get a penny. If anything, maybe you got $5,000. Hashem made it that you got your money back, and he eased the whole situation. So anyway, I thought it was a great story. And then the next story that Lori reminded me of is going to tie into the topic of today. So we are going to do chapter 7, those of you who did get the book. And of course, you don't have to get it. But if you wanted to, that's also great. So we're going to do chapter 7. And the reason we're going to do it, like I said, is because it reminded me of this other story that I wanted to share with you that is really such a beautiful story. So let's start in chapter 7. And he what he's doing in this book is he's taking each chapter, he's taking a verse from Tehillim, or I haven't read the entire book, but I'm assuming there's going to be, oh, it's all Tehillim actually. Maybe it is. No, it's not just Tehillim. It's Navi, it's prophets, it's different sources. He's taking Pesukim verses that are related to Bitachon, to trust in Hashem, and he's going to explain to us different interpretations of how we find concepts of trust, which we are, of course, already familiar with very intimately in this class, that have to do with that. So let's start from the beginning. So in chapter 7, he gives us Tehillim 11, chapter 11, verse 1, where he says, La natzech le David, Badonai hasisi es tomru le nafshi nodi har chem tzipor. Okay, so here's what it means. For the conductor by David, right? This is a psalm by the psalmist David. In Hashem I have taken refuge. How dare you say to me, or how dare you say to my soul, flee from your mountain like a bird? So David is saying something about a bird, about somebody referring to David as a bird. What is this? What is going on here? And first of all, what is the context of the situation? So the first thing he's going to tell us is that the context of this verse of Tehillim, and we know the entire psalm, the entire book of Tehillim, is things that are happening to David, a different experience that King David is having. And in this parak, in this chapter, King Shaul is already pursuing David. He's already turned against David, and he's pursuing him. If anybody remembers from learning Navi, from learning Shmuel Aleph, Shmuel Beis, Shaul turns against King David. He was a great king, but the spirit of Hashem left him and he became cuckoo, and he pursues David. And it's a very interesting, beautiful story with a lot of drama. It's for children. It's very exciting to learn, especially for boys. But anyway, so Shaul is pursuing David, and David he's a fugitive. He's literally on the run. And a lot of Tehillim is about this very hard experience where David is on the run from Shaul. And then there's many other experiences. He's also on the run later for fighting for his life from his son, which we're going to talk about too. And as each of his hiding places is revealed, he must run to seek shelter elsewhere. So he's constantly running. And he compares himself to a bird. And the Malbim says that one of the commentators says that he compares himself to a bird. Why? Because a bird flirts from branch to branch without any apparent reason, right? I see in my backyard, the birdies go from branch to branch, and they jump and they hover, and it's like, okay, why are they doing that, right? However, David realizes that it only seems that he's being chased from place to place. It seems like that. It seems like he goes to a place and they tell on him or whatever it is, and he has to run to the next place. Like it's just, circumstances that are leading him from place to place. But David knows that really he's always under Hashem's shelter, that he's not at the mercy and the whims of, circumstance, but really that Hashem is always with him, and that protection is constant. Just the location is changing. And he tells us here in the book, David Sutton, right? Yeah, Rabbi David Sutton tells us that this is an important tool for life. At times, people feel that they are arbitrarily bouncing about, right? I go from this job to that job. This happened to me, and this grade, and that grade, and this accident, and that bill, and that whatever, right? House to house, school to school, school to school, date to date, right? And you might think that you're like a bird, that you're just landing everywhere, but resulting nowhere. However, David HaMelech tells us this is all an illusion. We have to know that it's an illusion. It's not random. It's not like Hashem is not with you. Hashem is with you. And as we're going to see very soon, Hashem is guiding each of your steps. So it's all an illusion that you're just like a little bird hovering from place to place. Every spot in which a person lands is precisely where Hashem has sent him, and always for a purpose. And that's a very, very important point, right? Wherever you are in life, there is a purpose to be fulfilled. There is a reason why you're there. And this reminds me of a story, not the story that Lori kindly reminded me that I should tell you, but another story. Maybe it's a few stories that I'm reminded of, but one is Mrs. Miriam Swerlove. Mrs. Miriam Swerlove writes that she had a close relationship with the Rebbe. Her family actually, and the Rebbe's family, the Rebbe and her grandfather, or the Rebbe's grandfather and her grandfather were related. I don't know, but she had a relationship also by family relationship, not just with the Lubavitcher Rebbe. And she says that there was a time in the late 60s, I think, that she and a group of women went to Detroit for a Nishei Chabad convention. They had an event of women, convention in Detroit, and it was the winter. And after the convention, I think it was a women's and girls convention, and they were 20 ladies waiting in the airport to take their flight home. Now, it so happened that there was a snowstorm. And because of the snowstorm, there weren't any planes leaving Detroit Airport to New York, where they were headed. And of course, the husbands had been with the kids for several days, and everybody was anxiously waiting for their wives to come back. And the wives are also anxious to get back to, kind of make the house back in order and everything back to routine, right? So they're like not very happy that this flight gets canceled, and they're stuck there till who knows where, till who knows when. So they decide that they're going to go to a payphone. Remember those payphones? They're going to go to a payphone, and they're going to call the office of the Lubavitcher Rebbe, Chabad headquarters in New York. And so one of the leaders of the group, or the leader of the group, Mrs. Popak, I think it was, she gets on the payphone and she starts putting the quarters, and she reaches the Rebbe's secretary, Rabbi Klein, and she tells him that they were stuck in Detroit, in the Detroit airport. And Rabbi Klein puts them on hold, and he comes back a minute later, and he tells her the Rebbe doesn't understand the word stuck. And so Mrs. Popak is trying to explain what stuck means. Maybe the Rebbe doesn't understand the English word stuck, right, in Yiddish. So he's trying to explain what the word, the American term stuck means. And she's putting more coins into the payphone so that the call wouldn't drop, right? And Rabbi Klein says, no. The Rebbe knows what stuck means. The Rebbe says that a Jew is never stuck. So the ladies obviously understood the message. And they say that they rose to the occasion, and they stood 20 women who had just finished the Nishei Chabad convention, and they understood the Rebbe saying, look, if you're in an airport, obviously Hashem sent you there, get to work. And that's exactly what they did. They started passing out Shabbos candles and all sorts of material, and giving women inspiration to go light Shabbos candles, et cetera, et cetera. And she actually says that there are women, Mrs. Swerlove said that there are women that started actually lighting Shabbos candles because they got, quote unquote, stuck in Detroit, right? So in the Rebbe's worldview and vision, there is no being stuck, right? In Judaism, we're never stuck. The same idea we know from Yosef HaTzadik. He ends up in jail. And what is the thing that he tells his brothers when the brothers revealed to him? You didn't sell me, I was sent, right? I was sent. I wasn't stuck in this place, right? I was sent. There was a reason why I had to go to prison. Now look at what the reason is. Now we're here, etc. So we should never feel, and in fact, when he was in prison, we saw that that's exactly what he did, right? How did he end up becoming who he became? Because he was a person who was in prison with a happy countenance, with simcha, always finding what am I doing here? What can I do to make this dark place into a better place, right? And he had this quality of trying to lift and help the other prisoners. In fact, he started interpreting the prisoners' dreams, and we know the rest of the story, right? So wherever we are in life, that's where we're supposed to be, but meaning there is a purpose, and we have to find what that purpose is and get to work. And there's another similar story with Rabbi Simon Jacobson's father, Rabbi Alav Shalom, Rabbi Gershon Jacobson. At one point, he was hospitalized, and it was right before Rosh Hashanah in the late 80s. And I think Rabbi Simon Jacobson had a meeting with the Rebbe at that point, or maybe he went to ask for a bracha because his father was hospitalized, or whatever it is. And the Rebbe gave him a book to give his father, and he said to tell his father, Rabbi Gershon Jacobson, his father, when you finish the mission for you were sent to the hospital, you're going to be released. And obviously, they also got the message, and they all got to action. And his wife, Mrs. Jacobson, is a very active, strong woman, and he immediately got to work the hallways of NYU Hospital. And she would anybody she would meet, she would tell them to light Shabbos candles, and they had pushkas, tzedakah boxes, and the doctors were giving, and the nurses were giving, and they were doing all these things. And of course, he quickly he was released and came home in time for Yom Kippur. And when he came to the Rebbe, there was a custom to go to the Lubavitcher Rebbe to get honey cake before Yom Kippur. And the Rebbe said in a surprise way that he was surprised that he was down. I think I missed this part of the story. I think Rabbi Gershon was down, that he was in the hospital for Rosh Hashanah and this and that. And the Rebbe said that he was surprised that he didn't understand, but on his own, the reason that he's in the hospital. I didn't think I had to remind you, said the Rebbe, to be joyful and to be a good influence on other people. That you were there for a reason to impact your environment, to do something with your environment. And with that, of course, he gave him a bracha for a good, sweet new year, et cetera, et cetera. But the point being is that we have to remember that God is in control. Again, and we're learning about bitachon, about trust. And this whole concept is really the bedrock of bitachon, that Hashem is the one running the show, and everything that is happening in our lives is not coincidence. It's happening for a reason. Wherever we're going, wherever we go, is wherever we need to go right now. And we're like this foot soldiers on assignment, and we are never to blame our circumstances, as we well learned from the story of Yosef. We just have to move forward and get the job done. Okay, so it's a very, very important idea. And in fact, as I said, a coincidence, there's never coincidence if we remember the word for coincidences or for chances in Hebrew is mikre, right? Mikre is chance. So really there's a way to understand this word that instead of mikre, it's rak mi Hashem. If we take the same letters, we see that it's rak mi Hashem. It's only from Hashem. So we have to understand that there are no coincidence. There's no mikre. There's rak me Hashem. Okay, there's only from Hashem. In life, there are no coincidence. Everything is purposely planned and by design. So let's continue on page 43. So when David HaMelech, again going back to Tehillim, where he's this idea that how dare you say that I am like that, my soul is like a bird, like I'm fleeing your mountain like a bird. When David HaMelech coordinates his escape with Yonasan, so if anybody who learned this part of Navi, or who didn't learn, as David is escaping Shaul, his best friend is Yonasan, Shaul's son, and they have this plan where Yonasan is going to let him know if Shaul is on the hunt for him, and he's going to throw arrows, and depending on how far he throws the arrow, it's a sign of whether he should run. Oh, I didn't realize she's on the weight room. Depending on how far the arrows go is a sign of whether David could stay or David should get moving. So Here he's telling us that they agree on this signal, that's the signal that they have between them to warn David of danger. And Jonathan would shoot an arrow, and if it landed close by, then David was okay to stay in that place close by, right, where he was. He can stay longer. And if it landed far off, David should run because Shaul was approaching. So this was the code, okay? So he says here, the far off arrow means lech ki shilachacha. Shilachacha Hashem, go because Hashem has sent you. So again, the same idea from Yosef Atzadik. I wasn't sold, I was sent. Hashem sent me. You guys didn't do this. Hashem sent me to where I am. So that arrow that is far away, that it's seemingly saying you have to run like a bird is jumping from branch to branch. No. It's not that you have to run. You're not running. It means that Hashem is sending you to a different place. Hashem needs you in another place for you to bring light into that place, for you to transform that place in whatever way. And it says here that Rabbi Elia Meir Bloch points out that it would seem more appropriate to say, go because Shaul is chasing you, right? Why not be clear? He explains that this is not the wording because it is not the case. David HaMelech realizes that he isn't running. It's not that Shaul is chasing him, right? Because if we go back to Shara Bitachon, to the fundamentals, it's not that nobody has any control to harm you or benefit you, correct? So therefore, it's not that Shaul is chasing him, is that Hashem is leading David to where he needs to go. He is only going where Hashem sends him, regardless of what causes him to leave. And the cause here might seem that is Shaul, right? But we understand from Shara Bitachon, again, from the fundamentals, that Hashem is the cause of all causes, and there are just agents making things happen. Likewise, wherever we end up going, for whatever reason we go, we too are being sent. We are always where we are supposed to be. And this whole idea really should give us a tremendous amount of comfort and ease a lot of the frustrations that sometimes we have in life. So here they give us a story about the Chofetz Chaim, not the Chofetz Chaim, but a rabbi in the town of Radin, which is Chofetz Chaim's town, and he was forced to be sent away because, they decided to go away because there was a lot of influences in this town, and his children were being influenced by the secularists who were living and all that. And so they were forced to leave and choose a new town. And how many of us haven't been in that situation where we're like, wherever, I, for example, can tell you that I used to live in China, and we were forced to live, not forced, but we realized this school is not working for us. This is not working for our family anymore. And even though, and there was also an economic situation that wasn't working for us. So even though it was a hard decision, we had to leave. But really, was that the cause of leaving? No, it was Hashem said, we need you in Houston, Texas, right? It seems like it's because you need a new school. And it seems like it's because you're at this point not making enough money to live in Shanghai and you have to live somewhere else and you need a new school. All of these were circumstances, but really Hashem is sending you for a reason. So similarly, in this story, this person moved to another town where there was better influences. There was a better school. There wasn't this secular influences. There was a strong Hasidic environment, etc. And it actually was very good for the children, and actually ended up being my same idea, right? I came to Houston and it was great for my children and my family. So the sense that they were being chased out of Radin was completely wrong. They weren't really being chased out of Radin. Instead, they were being sent to the place where they would flourish, and the situation that seemingly drove them out actually saved them, right? Just like the situation as we opened the class today, the situation of the guard wanting to give supposedly there to give the guy the ticket really was a situation that actually saved him and allowed for him to get his $10,000 back. So this that we're about to say now is actually the most beautiful part, at least for me, of this class. And it's regarding the bracha that we say every single morning. We say, blessed are you, Hashem, who directs the steps of man, right? We make a bracha, hamechin metzader gaver. Every single day we say the bracha. And I remember in the Gate of Trust podcast that my husband hosts, he had Rabbi Y.Y. Jacobson a while back. And in that episode, my husband asked him if he had one last powerful anecdote that really helped him internalize what bitachon is. And he shared, yes, I have something that really kind of like cemented this idea of bitachon for me. What was it? It was actually having to do with this particular bracha that we say every single morning. So the story is that Rabbi Y.Y. Jacobson was traveling from New York to Toronto to give a speech at 8 o'clock at night in Toronto. And he's in the airport and he's in the gate. And similarly, like the story with Miriam Swarlove before, these things seem to happen always in airports, right? There was a delay. And the delay was a half-hour delay, and then it turns into an hour delay, and then it's a 2-hour delay. We've all been in that situation, right? And you're like, oh my gosh, like, are we ever taking off, right? That happened to me recently, leaving Florida. It's like, oh my gosh, right? Alex was with me, right? We were like all kind of stuck in the airport, but as the Rebbe says, we're never stuck. So Rabbi Y.Y. Jacobson is WhatsApping the Toronto people, look, it's getting very late. I don't know. This plane's not leaving. I don't know. Am I going to make it on time? I don't think I'm going to make it on time. And the people in Toronto are saying, well, maybe you can do it. Maybe somehow you could connect to Wi-Fi on the phone. We have 100 or 200 people waiting for you. And you can do it on the phone on Zoom. You can give your talk on the plane. And Rabbi Jacobson is saying, no, you don't understand how I talk. I'm a very exuberant speaker. I'm going to have somebody next to me. I can't give a talk in the middle of the plane and start yelling. And, he's a very powerful speaker. This is not going to work. And this whole thing is going on. And all the while, he notices there's another frum, observant, older gentleman in the gate. And he's sitting calmly the whole time. He's in the same gate, headed to Toronto. And the whole time he's very calm. And Rabbi Jacobson says, and finally I approached him and I introduced myself and we got talking. And I said, and why are you headed to Toronto? And he said, oh, it's my grandson's bris. And it was maybe his first grandson, my first grandson's bris. And he says, at this point, is there a bris? No, I guess there was a bris. And he says, I don't understand. You're so calm. You're not upset. Like you don't seem the whole time. You weren't asking. You weren't moving. You were just reading the whole time. I see you with your. And he says to Rabbi Y.Y. Jacobson, he says, every single morning we say the blessing of Hamechim Mitzayir Gaver, that Hashem directs the steps of man. And I said it this morning. And if I didn't mean it, if I don't really believe it, then it would be a bracha in vain, right? You don't say a blessing in vain. So if Hashem directs the steps of man, then I'm here. I'm in the airport. I'm not in Toronto at the bris. And Y.Y. Jacobson says that it really cemented a very powerful idea that, yes, we say this every single day. And of course, we have to believe it. We have to understand that that's not just something, it's not lip service, which is one of the conditions going back to the Gate of Trust for bitachon to be bitachon. It has to be real. It can't just be lip service, right? We can't just say these things. And then when the plane gets delayed, we're a nervous wreck, right? Remember, the litmus test here is emotional equanimity, which is what we learned last week. We talked about the higher levels of bitachon, and we saw in those highest two levels, we talk about equanimity, right? That we are like, things might be going like this and crazy in our world, but we're like this. So we can't say such a beautiful blessing in the morning, and we're blessing Hashem because he directs the steps of man, and then the plane gets delayed and we're a wreck. So that's the story with Rabbi Y.Y. Jacobson. So let's go back to our text at the bottom of page 43. So every day when we say our morning blessings, we confirm this idea for ourselves. The expression is Hamechin Metzader Gaber, who prepares man's footsteps, and it originates in Tehillim. It also originates in Mishlei. I will tell you that later, but in both places is found. King David said it and King Shlomo said it. Okay, so in Tehillim, David says, by Hashem are man's footsteps established. And as the Kabbalists explain, Hashem puts us where we need to take out the sparks of holiness from that spot. The same idea we find even by Mitzrayim, by Egypt, right? Why were the Jews sent in Egypt? Because there were sparks of holiness that they needed to extract, and we know they extracted those sparks of holiness, and we are still here in this galus because there are sparks of holiness that we need to extract. And I remember when I first moved to China, when I was about to move to China, you'll like this story, Alex, because Ilana, our friend, mutual friend, well, she's more Alex's friend, but a friend in common that we have, Ilana said to me on the phone, she said, make sure that when you're in China, you're very careful with saying your blessings on your food. When you're eating an apple and you're in a park, you're going somewhere, just make sure that you say your blessings on your food. I said, what? And she's like, you understand that you're going there to elevate sparks. So don't, because again, in my head, I'm going to China, people. Like, it's not like, okay, it's not like I'm going to Vermont here. I'm going to the other end of the world. It's not a very familiar place. So she sent me off with that message.
How many years ago was that? Sorry, how many years ago was that?
How many years ago? So I'm married 19 years. I just had my 19th year anniversary. So that was 18 years ago, 18 and a half years ago, 18 years ago. Okay. So I was in Miami for a short time. And I remember exactly where I was sitting when I had that phone call. And she told me that. And she told me, because remember, you are being sent to elevate sparks. So have that in your consciousness. And at least even when you're eating your food, make sure that you're elevating the sparks. You don't know if you're just being sent there just to say a bracha on your food, right? So that idea is very, very important. So there's something spiritual to accomplish wherever we find ourselves, even in a traffic jam, even in a layover at the airport, even in the emergency room. And sometimes, by the way, it is interacting in a positive way with somebody else. Sometimes it literally is changing the day of the person who's taking care of you at the checkout counter at the store, right? Sometimes we encounter people and they're not in a good mood, they're having a hard day, and by us being kind and joyful, and how are you and how are things going, and thank you, and cracking a joke, and it changes the whole dynamic, and you realize, oh, maybe so we always have to be in like, how am I here to influence this situation, this environment, right? We're very, very careful. We have to be very careful. I was just traveling with my husband, and I'm very aware when I'm going places, when I'm in the supermarket, when I'm in the airport, when I'm traveling, right? Say thank you, say please, have a smile, right? Crack a little joke, right? Make it a light experience for the people in the airport, in the store, in the hotel, right? They should see, and especially we're from Eden, so people see that we're Jewish. They should see that we are a pleasure, right? But regardless of that, not because I need other people to see, that is important. It's a Kiddush Hashem. It's it's a sanctification of God's name. But the idea is that every place you are illuminating that place. You should be knowing that you're not there by chance. You're not interacting with that person who's offering to carry your luggage and store it for a while until they give you your room because by coincidence. No, maybe you are interacting with that person so that you can give him a little bit of light that day, a little bit of humor, a little bit of a more pleasant experience, right? So every interaction, we have to have that framework. All right. So, when we are beset by the thought of what am I doing here, right? Why am I stuck? And the Lubavitcher says, no, I don't know what stuck means. It's no such thing. A Jew is never stuck. Why am I here? This is the answer, right? Hameichim mitzader gaver. Hashem directs the steps of man. The Midrash, page 44, the Midrash relates that a noble woman asked Rabbi Yosef ben Chalafta, what does God do all day? This is actually a very, very funny story, a very famous story, because he answered that he makes matches, he makes shidduchim, and they don't tell you the end of the story here, but it's a very funny story where she cracks it. She doesn't believe him. She cracks a joke like, come on, how hard could that be? And she goes ahead and she decides, even I could make shidduchim. That it can't be that's what God is doing all day. And she takes her many, many servants, and she takes this maid and she puts him with this male maid and this, where she makes shidduchim between all her servants. And within a few hours, by the next day, there was chaos in her court, her palace, or whatever you want to call it. And this man was like hated this woman, and this woman hated this man. It was just a disaster. It's a very funny story. And obviously she comes back and she says that your God is great, and that obviously making shidduchim is not so easy. It's something that only God can do. Man cannot do it. So the point here is, so what does God do all day? He says that he makes shidduchim. So Rabbi Sutton says he once heard an interpretation from Dr. Jacob Greenwald that shidduchim, matches, really refers not to shidduchim as in couples, not only to matches as in woman and man, but really a far broader idea of matches. It means arranging the encounters of each individual. Who will sit next to us on a bus? Who will assist us in the bank? Who will be our children's teachers? Who will be our neighbors, right? All these things. And wherever we are, whoever we meet is mamash, really by design. It is like that. I just heard a crazy story also on the plane. I always download these stories to inspire podcasts. You should totally get into that podcast because it's very good. I download a bunch of episodes. And so when I'm in the plane, I just can listen to different stories. So one of the stories was, I think it was Rabbi David Sutton, I think is his last name. He was saying that he gets a call that this guy that he knows calls him that he got engaged, and he shows up at the engagement party, and he actually showed up early. He kind of got the time a little bit wrong, and he showed up early, and he's in the family, and the party hasn't really started. He's in the family's home, and as he sees as the family approaches for the engagement party, because he's too early, so it's like intimate things are happening. The party hasn't really, he's like a half hour before the party's been called, or an hour before. He got it wrong. But anyway, so he's there with his friend, and he sees that his this boy and this girl had dated a very short time, to the point that the rabbi said, "Oh, that's a little bit like, why? You went out 3-4 times?" Like, and he said, "Did you meet the girl's parents?" And the boy says, "No, I didn't meet them yet." And the rabbi's like, "Oh my gosh, that's a little crazy. Reminded me of the way I got engaged. I did the same crazy thing. Thank God it all worked out. Baruch Hashem." So in this case, so the boy hasn't met his future in-laws. So the party is at the boy's house, and they open the door, and the mother of the boy starts screaming at the mother of the girl. There's these two women screeching. And Rabbi Ben Susan says, "Oh my gosh," he says, "this hasn't even started, and there's already fighting. Yeah, this is not going to go very well." And a few seconds later, they finally disclose they finally hug. They stop screaming, and they hug, and they embrace, and they disclose what's all the commotion about and the excitement. What's the commotion? These two women, these kids dated 3-4 times. So 3 weeks ago, this daughter of the girl, this mother of the girl, was, I don't remember, it was Kever Rachel or one of Kivrei Tzadikim, one of the places where Tzadikim are righteous men and women are buried. I think it was Kever Rachel, but I can't remember. And she taps on the shoulder of this other woman who was there praying, and she says, "Excuse me, would you have another Tehillim?" Apparently, there were no Tehillim left. If anybody's been, sometimes, I mean, there's plenty, but sometimes there's nothing left. And she didn't bring her own. And this woman says, "I don't, but here, take mine." And she gave her Tehillim, and she continued davening, whatever she was doing. She was praying, and she prayed from the Tehillim. And she was so impressed by this woman who gave her Tehillim. Instead of saying, "I'm sorry, I don't have another one," maybe, he said, "No, it's fine, use mine." And it turns out that they both had gone there to pray for their children. And the one was praying for her son to find a girl, and the other one was praying for the other one to find a girl. And lo and behold, now they're meeting each other. They are the women who were saying Tehillim. The one lent the Tehillim to the other one. So that's how they recognized them, because they just saw themselves 3 weeks ago. You remember, where do I know this face? Oh my gosh, I can't believe it. It's you. You gave me the Tehillim, right? So that's a story that I just, right? And he hasn't met the boy's the boy hasn't met the Kala's parents. The Kala hasn't met the boy's parents. It's the engagement party, kind of like the way I got engaged, right? Nobody met each other, and I just got engaged. So people, but it worked out, Baruch Hashem. So anyway, so they open the door, and these two women are, oh my gosh, they hug, and what's the story? That 3 weeks earlier, they had both bumped into each other in a cave, in Kever Rachel or wherever it was, Meiron or who knows where. And one had told the other, please, do you by any chance have an extra Tehillim, a book of Psalms? And the other one says, no, but here, take mine. Insane. Exactly. It's insane. But we have to understand that this is exactly our life, right? It's exactly our life. And you can see it in so many ways. Even you can say Alex and I, we've been friends for like, what, 25 years, something crazy like that. Oh, it's a friend said, oh, you're moving from Miami to New York. I have a friend and you guys will probably really get along. And it was mamash like prophecy. It turns out that we got really along and we've been friends ever since, right? So it's all by design. It wasn't random. It's all exactly by design, okay? So we may have no idea what these encounters are accomplishing. And it is so, so true. We really, really, really don't know. We just went on a trip and this trip was like the most beautiful, incredible trip. And it was also the most, like the whole time we were on cloud nine because we were saying, this just dropped from the heaven. We don't even know how. Rabbi, my husband had sent an email to somebody he knows about some idea he had. And next thing he knows, 2 weeks later, the rabbi sent him an invitation. I'm organizing a leadership summit and I want you to come. My husband's like, what? This is so weird. And the whole thing was, again, so out of left field, but it's not left field. We think we're controlling every situation. We're not controlling anything. Hashem is just guiding us. You think you have a relationship with a person for one reason, it's completely different. It might be completely different, right? So we have no idea what these encounters are accomplishing, but we have to know that they're accomplishing something. They are meaningful and they are purposeful. They might be repairing for a sin, maybe something done in a past life, right? There's tons of stories about that. They might be opening a channel for a bracha, just like we saw with the story of the two kids who got engaged. They might be teaching us something that we'll need to know later in life, or they might be leading us to the person who's going to, even yesterday, I bumped into a person who was fundamental to my getting engaged to my husband. And the only reason I met this person is because I had moved into New York when I was 21 years old and I didn't have a place to go to Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Crazy story. And you start seeing, and today we're like in this summit together, the whole thing, right? So we don't know how sometimes people that come into our path are literally connecting us or playing an important role in our entire life story. But that often happens in our lives. We have to open our eyes. All we really know is what we say every single morning, Hamechin Mitzader Gaver. And just like the story with Rabbi Y. Jacobson and the man, the older Erlich man in the gate, right, taught us we have to mean those words. We have to internalize them. We have to know that we're not saying them for naught. They are completely true. That is exactly what's happening. God puts us where we're supposed to be. With this belief, we never have to wonder, what am I doing here? A well-known story of a tzaddik, Rabbi Yecheskel Abramsky, illustrates what it means to live by this belief in virtually any place that life takes us. So the story is that he was exiled to Siberia for, of course, the horrible crime, quote unquote, of teaching Torah, right? We know all these stories of communist Russia and the exiles to Siberia, and he was freezing and he was hungry and it was hard labor. And there's what am I waking up for, right? And he wondered, why was he saying Modeani? Why say Modeani every morning? Like, what is this, right? And he dug deep within himself until he found his answer. That he's saying thank you to Hashem every morning, that he was grateful each morning. What? That he has an opportunity to acknowledge Hashem. There's nothing else, but at least he has the opportunity to acknowledge that there is a creator, because really everything else is nothing, right? He was grateful that he was able to be grateful. Imagine this idea, okay? Even in Siberia, there were sparks of holiness to gather. Just even the thought of the fact that I'm alive to say thank you to my creator, that in and of itself, obviously that's a very high level, but that in and of itself is meaningful and purposeful. And many years at Rabbi Abramsky's funeral, Reb Shach said that he was jealous of Rabbi Abramsky, not of his learning or the Sepharim that he wrote, but of his years in Siberia, because that is what launched him to greatness. And of course, there's another message just in the story. We know that every challenge is not really a challenge, it's an opportunity. And obviously, I actually heard a beautiful story at the summit that I was. There was a girl, Natalie, and I forget her last name. One second. Actually, I'm going to get distracted if I start looking for it. So she's a Persian girl from New York, a girl from Queens. And she was a survivor of the festival, the music festival in October 7th. And she shared the story with us. And one of the really beautiful things that she shares is that this experience, and she was incredible, the way she spoke, she just like, it was really, really, I'll send the name so you guys can see her speak maybe on Instagram, or maybe I'm sure there's YouTube videos where she's spoken, because she says one of the most beautiful things that this traumatic experience, because it was a crazy experience, what she experienced, running hours on end from terrorists, and then the times that she thought, she and her friends thought, okay, this is the end, and how there was a pickup truck coming after 5 hours of them running, and they would like rest under a tree, and then and a moment that they were resting, because she said after the pockets of time where they didn't hear shooting, first of all, it took them a long time to realize what's happening. Okay, but from the pockets of time that they didn't hear shooting, they would take like little breaks of rest, because you have to remember that these kids were up, had been running for hours and in the sun and in the heat. They hadn't eaten. They didn't have any water. They had already ran out of whatever water they maybe could take from their sleeping bags and from the festival and run with. So anyway, so she said at that, there was one point where they were at a rest point, and they see a pickup truck, and they all realize this is the end. And she says, we kind of gave each other this look of, it was nice to meet you, because they know that these type of pickup trucks is the type that the Arab terrorists drive. And at that moment, it was this angel. She said his name was Moshe, I don't remember the last name, who had been for hours coming back and forth from another village and rescuing kids. And he puts the kids, jump into the pickup truck, and he drives them to another village. And, the end of the story goes there. But what I wanted to share really wasn't that part of the story, but the idea that she said that from this experience, she's now gained her voice as an advocate and as a public speaker, and she speaks beautifully, and it gave her a new meaning and purpose in life. She was just a real estate agent. She was like, I was just a girl in real estate in New York, and my life was just life. And now my life is so full and so meaningful, and I'm a spokesperson, and I've been to Washington, and I've been to all over the world, like really speaking on behalf of the Jewish people, so that the world should know what happened and what is our truth and what is the truth. And it's given her a tremendous life direction and meaning and purpose. And the way she said it was actually very moving and very beautiful. So again, she herself says, from this challenge, I really know that there was an incredible opportunity, that Hashem was choosing me and picking me and like changing the entire direction of my life. And from the darkness of this horrible experience, traumatic experience she lived, she's literally taking it and she like transformed it. And it's literally so set on bringing light and goodness and hope to the world, which is something that she hadn't necessarily, she said, I was not a very observant person. I was a secular girl. And she even says how she encourages women to light Shabbos candles. She gives such a beautiful message of hope and it's really of light, and it's very beautiful. So anyway, so continuing here with page 44, wherever Hashem directs our steps, and I'm going to get to the story that I promised you guys right now in about 2 minutes, wherever Hashem directs our steps, we find our purpose. If we stop asking, what am I doing here? And ask instead, what can I do here? Right? What am I needed for? Not what I need, not why I'm here. Right? Not what am I doing here? No, what am I needed for? What am I supposed to do in this place? If we can ask that better question, we will never doubt that we are exactly where we need to be. So it's going to ease, like I said at the beginning of class, a lot of that frustration. So we learned from David HaMelech that even when we're forced to run from place to place like David, we're always under Hashem's protection. Hashem sends us where our neshama needs to go to fulfill a certain purpose, which again, that's why the pasuk says in Tehillim, if we go back, how dare you say to my soul, it says here to me, but really says nafshi in the pasuk, my soul, flee from your mountain like a bird. Like birds, they just they go randomly from mountain to mountain, from branch to branch, from tree to tree. How dare you say that? My soul doesn't go places randomly for no rhyme or reason, right? Every place my soul needs to go, it's going there for purpose. Greatness is found by taking stock of wherever Hashem sends us and finding the sparks of holiness to be gathered there. So where are you right now? Think of what brought you there and what you can accomplish from this spot. So the story that I wanted to share with you was also shared by Rabbi Yoel Gold on Stories to Inspire podcast. And Rabbi Gold, some of you might be familiar with his videos. His videos are incredible. You can Google him, and there is just incredible wealth of beautifully produced videos of all sorts of topics regarding Ashgacha Pratis and mitzvahs and all sorts. It's just incredible, very well curated and narrated, and high quality production. So he's really made a mark with his videos. So he at some point he says, I'm not a fundraiser. I don't know how to fundraise. So I hired a fundraising coach. He was highly recommended to me by a friend. And I used to have these Skype sessions with this wonderful fundraising coach. And I live he says, I live in LA. And this fundraising coach was in Har Nof in Eretz Israel, in Israel. And in one of their Skype sessions, he says, yo, do you have a trip coming up, to New York? He says, yeah. So he says, do you have anybody who you know who's in New York who might be a good person for you to meet and talk to them about this project? You really need to approach people to help you with this project. What is the project? Rabbi Gold wanted to make curriculum for schools based on, I guess, some of the videos that he'd been making. He wanted to create some type of learning curriculum for maybe high school students or school curriculums out of this material that he had. So he says, I don't know. I don't really know anybody in New York. Well, I actually have a high school friend, Ari, but I haven't seen him in 20 years. And he says, no, you have to. And he's actually very successful. He built a real estate empire. He's a big real estate investor. But I can't really call him. Like I haven't seen the guy in 20 years, right? He was my good high school friend. And the fundraising coach says, no, send him a text right now. And you don't have to be duplicitous. You can be completely upfront. This is what you say. Hey, Ari, how are you? This is Yael Gold. I hope you remember me. I'm actually coming to New York in, a few days, whatever it is. And I have a project that I would like your help with. So you're not misleading him. You're not telling him that you just want to see him and then you're going to, no, you tell him, right? You need some help with a project. And this guy Ari responds right away and tells Yoel, of course, Yoel, tell me when, where, and let's meet up. Tell me exactly where, and I'm so happy that we're gonna get together. So Yoel Gold calls his brother, who is a businessman in I don't know where, and he asks him for advice, like where do you take a person in New York, a nice restaurant, if you're gonna hit them up for a lot of money. And so he says, you know what? Take him to a restaurant called Pescara. And Yoel Gold says, fine. Okay. So he tells him, Ari, well, let's meet up Pescara on Wednesday at 12 o'clock. Perfect. Done. So the morning of the meeting, Yoel Gold at this point has prepared a whole all the talking points of how he's going to tell Ari. He prepared with a speech, not his speech coach, his fundraising coach, all the talking points of how he's going to make the pitch and the keywords that he has to say to prepare, to really pitch his idea and compel this man to invest in his project. And he's getting ready and he has a meeting at 12 o'clock and Ari texts him. He says, hey, Yoel, which Pescara? Avenue P or Avenue M? So Yoel is thinking, I didn't know there were two Pescadas. Like, what do I know? I don't even know what Pescada is. I just said it was a restaurant Pescada, right? So he says, Avenue M. Like he's just like Avenue M. He's not from New York. He's from LA. He's going wherever he tells the Uber he's gonna go, right? So he said, oh, Avenue M. Perfect. See you there. 12 o'clock. So Yoel Gold arrives. 5 minutes to 12. He sits down. Ari arrives 12 o'clock And he says, I couldn't talk about money the whole time. We're having such a nice time and we're catching up about life and all sorts of things, 20 years. And I just didn't have the heart to talk about money. But towards the end, I know that Ari's a very busy man and it's approaching time for dessert. And I know like the clock is ticking. Either I make my pitch or I'm going to miss my chance. So he says, I excuse myself and I go to the bathroom. And he says, very funny. He says, I have to confess, I did something very wrong. I prayed in the bathroom. So in the bathroom, he starts talking to Hashem. He says, Hashem, please help me. I have to say the words, please help me. And he looks over his script. It's in this pocket and he reviews what he has to say. And he puts it back in his pocket and he comes back and he says, my palms are sweaty. And I come back for dessert. And I start telling him of Ari, about these videos, and I make these videos. And as he's starting to talk about the videos, he says he's facing the entrance of the restaurant. So Ari's facing the back because Ari's facing him. So Rabbi Gold is facing the end door of the restaurant and he sees a woman that's entering the restaurant and he says, and she has that look, the look of when people recognize me. And I said, oh, no, lady, bad timing. I'm about to make the pitch of my life. Do not come to talk to me. And of course, the lady comes and she approaches the table and she says, Rabbi Gold, are you Rabbi Gold? And he's like, hi, yes, I am. And she says, oh my God, you don't understand. My students are so excited. And right here next to this restaurant, there's a girls' high school. And the girls at 12 o'clock, they very often come to Pescara to grab some sandwiches. And they came in a few minutes ago. And they saw you, they ran back to school and they said to this, let's call her Mrs. Cohen. I don't know what her name is. Mrs. Cohen, Yael Gold is in the restaurant. Maybe go find him. Maybe he could come talk to us. The girls always love having good speakers. That means they miss class. And obviously if it's a good guy, it's Yael Gold. He makes those great videos that the girls all watch in high school, right? And of course she runs to the restaurant and says, the girls are so excited. Please, Rabbi Gold, will you come talk to the girls? And he's like, yeah. And she's like, because, we watch your videos and they love your videos. But actually, there's one thing that I would recommend. And he says, she starts proceeding to give the entire pitch. She starts saying, I think you need to make a school curriculum. And she starts explaining why it's so important. And he says, the whole thing, I literally was like, quiet, and I'm thinking Ari's probably thinking that this was a plan. Like I hired this woman to come make my pitch because it was like literally she said everything that needed to be said. And she's like, so will you come? And he's like, oh, you bet I will. Right? He says, sure, I'll be done with lunch and I'll be right there. And she's so happy and she leaves and Ari is not Ari, and Yael Gold is blown away. Ari looks at him and says, Yael, how much do you need for this project, right? Because this woman like painted this whole idea of how the world needs his curriculum and it's so important for high school kids and blah, 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 and education and the whole thing. So Yael Gold didn't have to say a word. Ari says, how much do you need for this project? And Yael says, $100,000. And Ari gets his checkbook and writes him $100,000. And he was blown away. And with that, Ari leaves. Is there anything more I can do for you, Yael? He's like, no, thank you very much. You've done enough. Thank you. We'll be in touch, blah, blah, blah. And he goes to the high school next door. And the Mrs. Cohen introduces him. And she says to the girls, you don't know the Ashgacha Pratis. You don't know the divine providence that Rabbi Gold was right here next to our school. And he's able to come to us. And she says, girls, I'm about to teach you about Ashgacha Pratis. She doesn't know the end of the story. Let me tell you the story, right? And he says that night after he spoke with the girls and he got on the plane back to LA, he was so moved by the whole experience that he was holding this check of $100,000 and he had his script. And he says, I took this script out of my pocket at the restaurant, actually. He says, I took the script after Ari left. I looked at it and I shredded it into pieces. And I realized, he says, I'm sitting on the plane thinking about the whole experience. And I realize every single morning we say this bracha, right? We say this bracha, this blessing that Hashem directs the footsteps of man. And, he says that blessing comes from Mishlei. And King Shlomo, when he talks about this idea that Hashem, that God prepares our steps, he says, Ve'adam ma, meaning, and what does man have to do? Like, and man, what? Like, what now? What should a person do? Right? And he says, the next verse, like as the verse continues, King Shlomo answers the question. So Hashem directs the steps of man. And now what? What does man have to do? And King Shlomo says, Yavin darko. A person has to continue on the way. Meaning, says Rabbi Gold, meaning he realized the words of King Shlomo are so important. Yes, Hashem is directing the steps of man, but a person has to has to move. He has to do something. He has to, he says, in his case, have a script in his pocket. He had to have his script. Now, once you have the script, he says you have to have your goal. You have to have your goal and you have to have your plan for achieving your goal. But once you have that, then Hashem sends Mrs. Cohen and she does the rest of the job for you. But you have to have your script. And then you don't need the script. You can tear it in pieces because at that point, you've set out your goal. You've set what you're going to do, how you're going to do it. And then Hashem comes and he puts Mrs. Cohen and she opens the path for you. So she steps in the picture. She's the emissary of Hashem. So that's the idea of Hameichim Metzai der Gaver, that Hashem directs the steps of man. And we have to know, like it says in chapter 5 of Bitachon, not chapter 5, in chapter 3 of Shar Bitachon, right? And one of the 5 conditions is that, yeah, and we have to do something. We have to have the script in our pocket. But the script is meaningless because now we have the script, we have the goal, we have the direction. Mrs. Cohen is going to step in because, again, he had, like he says, I didn't even know there were 2 pescadas. I just chose M. Was I making a choice? Of course not. I wasn't making a choice, right? Hashem is making the choice for me. He's making the choice for me to go to Pescara and Avenue M right next to the girls' schools. What does he know that there's a girls' school there? He doesn't even know there's 2 Pescadas, right? So that Mrs. Cohen should come in. So that is the lesson. So with that, let's see if there are any questions. I see there's something going on in here in the chat. Oh no. That reminds me of Moses being in the desert and God preparing him to be in line with his purpose to deliver God's people from bondage in Egypt. That is actually such a nice example because it's true. Moses, it's not actually in the desert. Well, yeah, it is. Moses is Hashem appears to Moses in the burning bush, and he tells him the vision, and we talked about this when we learned Shar Bitachon. He tells him the mission, and Hashem says, and Moses says, no, like I can't go, like I can't speak, right? I can't speak properly. I have a stutter. I can't speak. Like go find somebody else. And Hashem reminds him, right, that he has to go, and he is being sent. Right? And Hashem is going to put everything in his place so that he succeeds in his mission. So yes, so the idea that everywhere we're being sent, we're sent on a mission and Hashem directs the steps of man is really incredibly powerful. So, so ladies, I think that's all for today. Any comments, any questions? Anything? Are we good?
Amazing.
Okay, so good. So then we're going to continue next week with this book, and we'll probably I will probably start from chapter 1. It was just that I remember that story with Yael Gold was connected to chapter 7, so that's why I decided to start there. But it's all good. Okay, ladies, thank you so very much, and I will see you next week. Okay,
Thank you so
have a good Shabbos. Bye.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.